Okay, so stitch grooving, not complicated. All we're doing is we're taking this tool, it's called, not surprisingly enough, a stitching groover, and we're going to pull this around, referencing off of the edge of the sheath, and we're cutting a groove for our stitches to sit down into. Ooh, that's really close to our ornamentation there. But it is what it is. It's got to happen. And we'll do this a couple times to give us a nice groove. Now most people, I shouldn't say most people, I can't speak for most people. A lot of people do the grooves on the front side only. I prefer to do them on both the front and the back, as long as your edges are accurate and your awl goes in straight. Shouldn't give you any problems, so I think it just makes a nicer job. Okay, last step before we move on to final dyeing and stitching is to bevel the edges, but I learned my lesson on the swivel knife. I'm not going to make it on the edge beveler. So what I've got here is some strop compound and a strop I made. And before we do the edge beveling, we're going to strop our edge beveler. Doesn't take much. It's probably good. Nice polished edge. Don't know if you can see that. But all we do is go around all of the exposed edges. I'm not going to do the, might do part of the belt loop. But really I'm going to start here at the top. We're just going to run this around. Let's start down here. Okay, so I've sharpened and stropped my awl. Before I get started, I'm going to put a little wax on my awl. I also do this with my stitching needles before I get started. And the key to stitching is, first of all, following your groove, making sure that this is a diamond shaped awl. And what you're looking for is kind of a, it's going to be hard to describe, kind of a parallelogram is the hole it matches, and you want the two of the long edges of your parallelogram to be parallel with your stitching line. I can't really explain it much better than that. That's what you're trying to do. So you have to do that, so you're keeping your angle of your awl consistent as you go down through, and you're consistent with the stitching line. And also you want to make sure, and this is very important, to put it through vertically. Otherwise you're going to come out on the other side not in your stitching groove. So let's get started. Okay, so we're ready to stitch. We're going to use a black waxed nylon thread. I believe it's 1 millimeter of this particular spool. We're going to do one line, terminate that line, and do the other line. We're not going to stitch those together. And we're going to use kind of a modified rule of thumb here. The common number is you take 4 times the length of the stitch line is the length of thread you want to use. But we're going through 3 layers of 8 to 9 ounce leather. That's a lot of thickness to go through. And plus, thread is cheap, and I don't want to run out halfway through the stitch line. So I'm going to take and make that just a generic 5 times. I'm probably wasting, what, half a penny's worth of thread by doing that. I'm okay with that. just for poetry's sake, I'll cut my thread using my new knife. Now to thread your needle, first of all, hope your eyes are good. But it's not just simply stick the needle through the thread through the eye of the needle and you're good to go. There is a locking process you have to go through. Okay, apparently I should have my reading glasses here. I will come back once I get the... No, there we go. There we go. It's going to feel really bad having to take a break to thread a needle. But we've got it. Oops, lost part of... There we go. Are we good? Do we have it? I think we have it. Yeah. Okay, so you pull it through. You take your tag end and pierce the tag end with the needle. Also not easy to do. Pull the thread through it, and then pull it down tight. And what that does is that locks the needle into the thread. We do that on both sides. Alright, to start our thread, doesn't really matter if we start on the inside or the outside. We'll start on the outside. Push your needle through, of course. Even up your threads so you've got the same length. Now the best way to do this is what's called using a stitching pony. I don't have one. I haven't taken the time to build one yet. But a stitching pony would simply hold this like so that I could use both hands to stitch. Much quicker, much more efficient. Like I said, I don't have one. So we're just going to have to make do. And immediately run into a problem. Problem solved. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull one thread through, not all the way. We're going to take the second thread, holding the first thread back, push the needle through, trying to keep from piercing that thread. Okay. Really need my reading glasses, apparently. And before we pull that needle all the way through, we're going to hold it there. We're going to take our thread, our first thread, and pull on it to make sure we haven't pierced that thread. Because if we do, we're done, and we'll have to go through a lot of pain and agony to correct that. It's not a good error to have. We pull the stitches tight, and there we've got our first stitch. And basically you just proceed. You want to keep your order the same. You know, if you're coming through from the front, coming through from the front first, you want to do that on every stitch, just to keep your stitches looking nice and uniform. So we're at the end of our second stitch line. So what do you do to terminate this? Well, it's real simple. All you do is turn around and reverse stitch, going back over the stitches in the opposite direction. And I do this for 2 stitches on one side and 3 on the other thread, because you always want to end those in the back. So let me do that real quick. And frankly, I often have to use a pair of needle nose pliers because I use an awl that is very small relative to the size of my needles and size of my threads, because I want that to be a tight fit at the end. So let me just run this back through real quick and I'll show you how we terminate it. Okay, so we've got our threads run back through. We've terminated in the back here. Now if you take a pair of scissors and try to cut this off, you're going to have longer tag ends than you really want. What I prefer to do is take a knife, starting with the one closest, hold the edge of the knife right up against the thread, and pulling on the thread and pushing it back and forth. And you'll get a nice clean cut right on the edge of the leather. You won't even really be able to see where the tag is. So our sheath is really done. All we have left to do now is to slick the edges. I'll show you how to do that, and then apply a finish. So to slick the edges, all I'm doing is taking a little bit of water, applying it to the edge, and then taking a burnisher. We're going to start with this and try to end with this groove, because we want the smallest groove we can get. It'll make a nice tight, clean looking edge. And you're just going to start working this. And you're doing exactly what it says. You're burnishing it. You're taking those loose leather fibers, binding them together, and then compacting them. Now I've got gum tragacanth. I think I'm pronouncing that, if not correctly, at least close, which is the product that's sold to use for this, rather than water. And frankly, I've not found it to be any more effective, and actually probably a little less effective, than just plain water. So I'm not sure if you can see the edge we've got on that already. And you've seen how long I've been working it. So we're just going to go all along all of the exposed edges, using the smaller grooves for the smaller areas, larger grooves for the larger areas, and just give this a nice slicked up appearance. So I'm using a product called Phoebing's Tan Coat. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I've used this quite a bit. It's not supposed to be as weather resistant as Resolene, but in my experience it's always held up real good. And this is, again, like all this stuff, frankly, this isn't rocket science. You just rub it on, kind of buff it out. And here is our finished sheath. You can see it's got a nice tight friction fit. Pulls out easy though. Belt loop. Got a little bit of ornamentation on there. Overall, pretty pleased with it. I think it'll hold up well. What I really wanted to do with this video, anybody that has done leather working knows how to make one of these, so it's not about teaching someone how to make a sheath. It's about showing you that it can be done, right? I get the feeling from talking to some of the people I do work for that they think that leather working or metal working or woodworking is some kind of alchemy, that it's difficult to do. It's not. And you saw me using some special tools, the stitch wheel, the beveler, etc. Those are nice to have, and they will improve the quality of your work. But you can do this kind of thing with very little investment. A razor knife, one of the little hand punches, wheel punches that you can buy anywhere at Lowe's, at Home Depot, that sort of thing. A couple of needles and some wax nylon thread, and you're pretty much in business. So give it a try. It's not hard, and for less money than you would spend on even just a commercial sheath, you can have a piece that you made, that's customized, that is what you want, and eventually you'll get good at it, and maybe you'll want to take it a little further. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a like down below. And if you want to see more about self-sufficiency, be it homesteading, gardening, leatherworking, woodworking, DIY, all that sort of thing, please come over to selfsufficientpath.com, where we're putting up content about this type of thing all the time. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.